Morning students, hope you all are staying safe at home. Today we will be starting a new lesson of political science, chapter 4, the Union Executive. As the executive branch of the government, it is composed with President, Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. Let us learn about them. President. The President is the head of the state and also the head of Commander in Chief of the Indian Armed Forces. According to Article 53 of the Constitution, all executive powers are in the hands of the President. The President of India is, however, a titular head who is bounded by the Constitution to act upon the advice of Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. Let us learn about the process of election of President. The President of India is elected by an electoral college consisting of members from both the Houses of Parliament and the legislative assemblies and legislative councils of all the states and union territories. The election of the President is thus indirect and it is done by the representatives who are being elected by the people, or we can say the people they elect the representatives and then their representatives elect the President. To be eligible to the office of the President, a candidate must not be less than the age of 35 and should be qualified to become a member of Lok Sabha. The President of India is elected for a term of 5 years and unless removed earlier by Parliament for violation of any of the Constitution. And this process is known as impeachment, which we have learnt in the last chapter. So now let us learn about the powers of the President. There are wide varieties of powers in the hands of President. The first is legislative powers. The President has the power to summon either of the both houses for a session. He or she can nominate members of the Parliament. He or she can address the first session of the Lok Sabha. They can give or withhold assent to the bills passed by the Parliament. They can dissolve the Lok Sabha. They can promulgate or ordinances. That means they can enforce any of the particular temporary law which is being made at that point of time, which is passed temporarily in parliamentary acts. They can summon a joint session of the House when there is a deadlock over a bill between the houses of the Parliament. The next is executive powers. The President is the head of all the executive branches of the Union government, where all actions of the government are thus taken in the name of President. So the executive powers of the President include the power to appoint and remove the Prime Minister, the power to appoint and remove the ministers from the Council of Ministers on the advice of Prime Minister, and to appoint the state governors and members of Election Commission on the advice of Prime Minister. So the judicial power includes grant pardon to a person who is convicted of any of the offence and to appoint the judges of Supreme Court, High Courts and Attorney General. Emergency powers of President includes a power to declare a national emergency in the country when there is any threatened by war, a state emergency if there is any constitutional machinery breakdown and in any of the state, and a financial emergency when there is when there is threatened to the financial stability of the country, and during that emergency fundamental rights of citizens must, or we can say, can be suspended. So let us learn about Vice President. The Vice President is the presiding officer or the ex officio chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. The Vice President officiates as the President in his or her absence. The Vice President may, on the advice of Prime Minister, act as the President till a newly elected President assumes power. Let us learn about Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the real or executive head of the Government of India. He or she is the leader of the majority party that forms government at the center. Now let us learn about the term. The Prime Minister does not have fixed tenure. They can retain their position for the full term of the Lok Sabha and there are no term limits of the office of Prime Minister. The powers of the Prime Minister includes the Prime Minister can advise the President on the appointment of the Council of Ministers to assign different departments like Defence, Foreign Affairs, Finance, Education to various ministers. The Prime Minister can dismiss ministers and shuffle their departments or portfolios. The Prime Minister presides over the meetings of the Cabinet and coordinates them, helps them to supervise the workings of various departments. They also takes part in all the major policy decisions, and they helps the president to draw up the annual budget. The prime minister acts as an advisor to the president of India, and he or she is the link between president and the legislature. So the prime minister also advises the president on the appointment of the governors, ambassadors, auditor general, judges, and chief election commissioners, among others. The Prime Minister advises the President on when to summon, dissolve, and prorogue the Parliament. Now let us learn about Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister exercises executive power with the aid of Council of Ministers, as the President appoints the Council of Ministers on the advice of the Prime Minister. To be eligible for the appointment as a minister, a candidate must be a member of either of the House of the Parliament, and if they are not the member of Parliament, so at the time of their appointment, within 6 months, they should obtain the membership of either of the two Houses of Parliament. The Council of Ministers is headed by the Prime Minister, and it consists of cabinet ministers, ministers of states, and deputy ministers. So the cabinet ministers are the senior ministers, and who are having independent charge of most of the important ministries like defense, finance, external affairs, among others. The body formed by cabinet ministers is called cabinet, which is very important body in the government. The prime minister, he or she works with close collaboration, cooperation with the cabinet ministers to arrive at a particular decision, as they are the senior members. They know more, they are having the more experience. So the ministers of states and deputy ministers assist the cabinet ministers in discharging their function. Now let us learn about collective responsibility. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, they are collectively responsible to the legislature, which implies that if they lose the confidence of the Lok Sabha, if there is a vote of no confidence which is passed against them, if there is the simple majority which has been passed, and the Council of Ministers that time along with the Prime Ministers has to resign collectively, and that is known as collective responsibility, where if no confidence motion is being passed in the Parliament, with the Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, all the Council of Ministers has to resign collectively. So students, with this we have reached to the end of the lesson. Read the same from your textbooks, and if you have any doubt, feel free to ask. Till then, keep learning and have a good day ahead.